Hello everyone, you're welcome to the third video in the series on handling date time. In the previous two videos, we discussed how to handle date in its most basic format, how to identify the different components of date time, and then later we went on to demonstrate how you can remove one date from another and you get the straight time difference between the two of them in terms of number of days. And then we looked at a more complicated scenario of network days, which ignores weekends and public holidays and gives you the exact days between two dates. And you can equally do a count of those days as shown in this code on the screen here. Now, there are a number of other scenarios that we have when we deal with dates that we have not demonstrated. For instance, if you want to generate one date based on another date, how do you go about doing it? Or you want to generate a time element based on another date time instance, how do you go about doing it? All of these are possible when you are working within Python environment, and that's the part that I would like to walk us through. Now, we need to create a variable. For instance, let's say I want to add days. I want to add certain days to a date. Okay, we'll use today's date as our reference point. So I can say time delta. That's like the difference that I'm trying to add, or the factor of dates that I'm trying to add. So I can come in here and say, this is going to be dt.time delta for me. And when I open this parenthesis, there are a number of things that I can add. My variable is time delta, and I'm using time delta method within, the date time class in here. So I can add days, I can add seconds, I can add microseconds, I can add milliseconds. It's possible for me to add weeks, I can add hours, I can add years. So those are options that are available, to you. So for instance, if I say I'm adding days, it will prompt me, how many days do you want to add? Maybe I just say 4 days is what I'm adding. And then the challenge now will be, what am I adding 4 days to? I'll say today is my variable. Already we have it created, but we can just create it again and say dt.date time dot today. So this gives us today's date. So if I want to add time delta, which is 4 days, to today's date, what would the result be? In some other, tech platforms, you have something like date add. In this case, Python doesn't have date add. This is the way it implements it. So my new date is going to be today plus my time delta. Okay, so I can come back here and say new date. Let's run this and see what we get. So the new date comes back as October 1. And if we check that correctly, that's certainly the situation, because today is 27th September. If I add 4 days to it, it will be exactly October 1st, 2024. And the time is precisely what is in here. Now, sometimes you get a result like this and you're fine with it. Another person may say, I'm not interested in just the new date showing me the date and time. Rather, I just want to see the date element alone. If that's your target, just bring in this, and then it will show you that your new date will be 2024 as the year. October is going to be the month, and then the day is going to be the first. Now, the same way we added days to the existing date, we can equally remove days from an existing date. So what that would look like is, let me take a copy of this. I create a new cell down here, this is going to be deduct certain days from a date. So the only tweak you just do here is to say minus. So if I'm taking 4 days away from today, it's easier for me. I'll just put minus there and it tells me today is 27. If I take 4 days away, it takes me back to 23 September 2024. And that's pretty, straightforward for us. So this is the way you can implement that in Python environment. If your task is not in days but weeks, it's possible for you to do that. The only thing is you change the parameter here from days to weeks. So let's say I'm adding 3 weeks to today's date. This is the only thing I'll change here, and I can execute my result. It tells me it will be precisely 18th October 2024 if I had 3 weeks to today's date. The same way I can add weeks to a date, I can equally remove weeks from a date. We have gone through a similar process. The remove certain, you can say deduct, remove certain weeks from a date. The approach will be to just negate what was there. So I can say remove 7 weeks, and let's see where it will take us to. This will be sometimes in August. Yeah. So it takes 7 weeks precisely from today's date, and it tells us the new date will be 9th of August 2024. That is a possibility for us, and we need to know how to do it. But it's not in all situations that you'll be adding days or removing days, adding weeks or removing weeks. How about if you are dealing with time? Yeah, we have an idea of what the current date time is. So this time around, I'll go in here and say now instead of saying today. I'll change this to now, and I'll say now plus time delta. I can't be adding weeks, rather I'm adding hours. Okay, so if I add 3 hours to certain, add weeks, no, it will be add hours to date time. Yeah. So if I add 3 hours to the current time, that naturally will take us to tomorrow, which is going to be 28th of September. So we can check that and see what the result is. Yeah, that's correct. So it shows me 28th of September. But remember that in my result, I'm already discounting the time element. So if I don't want that to happen and I want to see the specific time, I'll remove this and just keep it as the new date time. So if I run this again, it will tell me the new time after adding 3 hours to now will be precisely 2 a.m. 49 minutes 56 seconds on September 28, 2024. The same way you can add time to a date time instance, you can equally remove element of hours. I can say remove hours from a date time. The only thing is just play around with the figures there. I can remove 4 hours from now. It takes me back to like 9 thereabouts. Yeah, 17. Sorry, it says 27. This is still today's date, but this time around it will be around 7 o'clock if I take 4 hours from the current time. And this is correct. This is the way you play around with date time. Now, it's not just hours and that you can add or remove. You can do the same thing with minutes if that falls within the scope of what you are dealing with. So I can come in here and say add minutes to a date time. The only thing you need to change here will be the variable here. The parameter here will change from hours to minutes. I can add 35 minutes to the current time. That will take me to tomorrow. and the result is going to indicate that, yeah, early hours of tomorrow, because this recording is being done at a late time. So the same way you can add minutes to a date time, you can also remove minutes from date time, and you can play around with this based on your scenario, and then you gain more mastery of how this works. Basically, what we've done in this video is to see some other options that are available to us when we're working with date time. We have explored how we can add certain number of days to a given date, and we can equally remove certain number of days from a given date. We can add weeks, we can remove weeks, we can add hour, we can remove hour, we can add minutes, we can remove minutes. Same thing could be done with seconds, but pay attention to the way your result is displayed. If I'm displaying the full message on the screen, I'll just get the new date or time, and it will give me the date and time element. But if I'm interested in just the date, I'll come in here and say I want this. If I'm interested in the time, I'll go in there and say I want just the time element, and the appropriate response will be given. I hope you find this very useful, and if yes, click the like button, subscribe to the channel. It's a way of encouraging me to produce more. I see you in the very last video on handling date time in Python programming. Bye for now.